So Lewis and Clark, while they're going off and becoming heroes out in the East, going to Washington, D.C. and having fancy dinners and people giving them parades and all kinds of things like that, well, John Colter and John Potts, two fellas from the expedition, they decided that they were going to go all the way back out west where they'd been because they had such a highfalutin time. It was the greatest time they'd ever had in their lives. They were free. They saw some of the most beautiful country that they'd ever seen in their lives, and they knew that they could make a lot of money on some of them animals they could catch out there. They had these traps that they would catch these animals with, and when they caught these animals, the fur would be worth a lot of money to people back east, and they knew that. So they bought guns, they bought traps, they got all kinds of gear and stuff ready to go, and they got some canoes and went right up the river, right back the way the Lewis and Clark had come. And they got off and they traded with the Shoshone for horses, just like Lewis and Clark had done. And they went out in the mountains and they started looking for these beaver and other animals that were worth cash money when skinned. And so as they were out there, they're in this area that we talked about before. Idaho, Montana is where the mountains are today. And back in those days, it was known as Blackfeet country. And the Blackfeet, as we talked about, they were a pretty tough tribe. You didn't want to mess with them. Well, Lewis and Clark, kind of by accident, messed with them. As we talked about, there was an accident. Some guy came into their camp, tried to steal a gun, he got shot, and instead of trying to explain what happened, well, they went home. Well, John Colter and John Potts, either they forgot about that, or they remembered and they didn't think they'd care because they're strong men and I got some guns here, I can kill them all, I can take them on. And so they went out west anyhow. Now when they were out in this Blackfeet territory, sure enough, one night in camp, it was a beautiful night. There had just been a nice rain, and they started their fire back up, and the smoke had gone up into the sky, and you could see it blend in with the clouds, and the flickers from the fire would float up into the air, the embers, and you could start seeing stars. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. Beautiful evening, I should say. And as they were there, they noticed something. There was a noise behind them. There was a cricket, and the cricket stopped. You could hear the rumble of the creek behind them still. But they didn't hear those crickets. So John Colter knew that when crickets stop, something's up. So he grabbed up his rifle, and just as he was grabbing up his rifle, arrows are flying through camp. Just like this one here. So these arrows are flying through camp. Guns are going off. Bullets are flying by. John Potts wakes up from his dead sleep and he says, "What's going on, John? We gotta get here. We're gonna get killed." So John Colter raises up his rifle and he fires it off. And as he does it, well, he's got his pistol, but he knows his rifle is going to be the one that saves him. So he starts loading his rifle up again. Well, I'll tell you what, loading a rifle, back in those days, it takes an awful lot of time to load up a rifle. Now, there's 10 steps to load this rifle. You got to do it as quick as you can in a battle. He's not used to fighting battles necessarily. It usually takes about a minute and a half to load this thing up real nice-like to get it accurate. Well, he's not going to take every step as he should. He's not going to put the patch on there and take all the time to push it down real nice and tight. He's probably just going to drop a bullet in there and swish it down in there as fast as he can with his ramrod. So as he's doing that, the Indians are coming close. John Potts is about to pull up his rifle to shoot, and then he gets an arrow in his shoulder. He drops his rifle on the ground, and he's crying like a baby. He doesn't know what happened. He knows he's just got this big arrow in his arm, and he starts whining, "John, they shot me. I can't fight, John. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die." "You're just shot in the shoulder. Shut up." "I don't want to die. I got this girlfriend back home. She's the prettiest thing I ever done seen. I'm going to die." So he says, "Shut up. You're not going to die. We're going to fight." So John Colter, he does the right thing. He keeps fighting. But wait a minute. You got several Indian braves coming into this camp. You've only got one rifle and maybe his pistol's ready to go. He's not going to be able to put up much of a fight, and John Colter knows it. So instead, he flips his gun around and he says, "Come on, I'll take you down one by one. You. You're going down. I'm going to club you on the head, and then I'm going to take my tomahawk. I'm going to slash you." So he's ready to fight, and he looks crazy, to be honest. Now, the Indians, they ain't crazy. They're brave. They're ready to fight. They're not crazy. This guy looks like he might actually take down one or two of us while he's doing it. We ought to watch him. Now this other fella, John Potts, crying with this arrow in his shoulder, he's a-whining on, and he does the wrong thing. He begs for mercy. Now, why is that a bad thing? Well, in our day and age, mercy and kindness and compassion are wonderful traits. Now, to the Native Americans at the time, on the plains and in the mountains, the thing that was really honorable to them was strength and courage. And John Colter showed it. John Potts didn't. So he's a-whining on the ground, complaining with this arrow in his arm. And the Indians grab him up, and they capture John Colter too, and they take him back to their camp. And they decide, well, you know, John Potts here, this guy, the crybaby, we're going to make him an example. So they cut off his head and started mutilating his body right in front of John Colter. Pretty scary situation, if you ask me. Now, John Colter, he doesn't have his weapons anymore. In fact, they took his weapons from him, but they also took all his clothes. Now, why would they take all his clothes? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if you're in the woods, like I am out here, and you can see that there's snow on the ground, if you don't have any clothes on, you're not going to run away very far, are you? Especially if you don't have anything on your feet. So John Colter doesn't have any shoes, doesn't have any clothes, no weapons. He's pretty much helpless. He can't fight back. And they know it, and he knows it. So he sits there, and he spits in their eye. He's tied up, you know, and and they say, we like this guy. You're very brave. You know you're going to die because we outnumber you. You're stripped naked. We could kill you any moment, but we're going to have fun. We're going to play a game. The game is called arrows. Now, why is it called arrows? It's called arrows because, well, let's let the Blackfeet explain it to him. So they tell John Colter. Now, wait a minute. How can they tell John Colter if John Colter speaks English and he does not speak Blackfeet? And the Blackfeet do not speak English. How do they talk to each other? They use that Plains Indian and Rocky Mountain Indian sign language that we talked about. Now, through these signs, they explained to him how the game works. So they pointed at him and they said, you. Now, there's two ways to point at somebody and say you. There's the nice, polite way, which is kind of with your thumb, and you. And then there's the kind of rough way, and that's how the Blackfeet did it. You, or you, right? So they point at him and they say, you are going to run. We are going to ride horses and take arrows and shoot you and kill you. That's the game. Oh, what a great game. But John Colter is not thinking this is such a good game. So John Colter is going to have to run for his life. Now, he doesn't have any clothes. He doesn't have any shoes. But he realizes real quick, if I don't start running now, they're going to just kill me right here. So he starts running. And as he's running, well, they call them the Rocky Mountains for a reason, you know. The ground's rocky. And his feet are bare. His feet are stepping on rocks and So as he's running, he's getting all these rocks and jagged cuts on his feet. His feet are bleeding, but he didn't care. I got to keep going. But he ain't going very fast. So as he's running, he hears this thundering noise behind him, and it's not the river. What is that noise? It's the sound of the hooves of the horses from the warriors who are chasing him. And it makes a rumbling sound when there's enough of them, and he can hear it. So all these horses are coming up. And these warriors have spears, and they have bows and arrows, and they're coming up on him quick. So John Colter starts running a little bit faster. And as he's running a little bit faster, he runs right through a little cactus patch. Now, these aren't big cactus like you can think of when you think of the cactus. They're tiny little ones, and they got these tiny little pickers on them that are so small, when they get in your skin, boy, I tell you, it's hard to get them out. You can't even see them. And he runs right through the middle of them. And as he runs right through the middle of them, I don't care about the cactus, I gotta keep going. So he's running and running and running. And those Indians are getting closer and closer. One of them gets out ahead of the rest of the group, and he thinks, I'm going to be the hero of the day. I'm going to win this game. I'm going to kill this white guy. And so as he gets up close, he goes to stab him. John Colter accidentally, because he's scared and running, steps in a squirrel hole. Actually, it's a prairie dog hole. And he's running and running and running, and he's flat on his face. Just in a split second. And the guy on the horse is yelling and screaming, and he looks, and hey, where'd he go? He ain't here no more. And his horse steps in that same hole, cracks its leg. He flies off the horse, and he hits his head on a rock, and he's dead. Done. John Colter gets up. Oh my gosh, what? He's dead. I didn't even touch him. I am a good mountain man. So he realizes that he's still not out of trouble, because the rest of them are still coming. But now he's got a weapon. He grabs up the spear. He breaks off the tip. Now he's got himself a little blade he can maybe fight back with, knife fight. So as he's going, he runs further and further, and the ground sort of looks like it just stops. That's not good. But John Colter doesn't know for sure what it is, but he has a guess. So as he's running, he gets up a little bit, slows down, and he looks over the edge of this cliff, and sure enough, 30 feet below, that's about 3 stories, is the river. What do I do now? Well, he looks back and he sees the Indians. Looks down at the river. Indians, river. Indians, river. Indians, river. Indians, river. And he jumps. He dives down into that water, and it is cold, cold water. When he dives in it, luckily he didn't hit his head or break a leg or break an arm on a rock, but he landed right in the water, safe and sound as if he was in his mother's arms. Only his mother's arms weren't this cold and wet. Anyhow, there he is. He's just a freezing cold, and sure enough, he swims and he sees this beaver den. And now, what's a beaver den? It's where the beaver live. And when they build their homes, they build them out of logs and mud and stuff, and they slap them together. And the home is built with the door underneath the water surface, so that no animals like cougars or bobcats or coyotes could get the beaver very easily. So he knows that because he traps these animals to make money. So he swims underneath, and he climbs his head up, because he can't fit his whole body in, sticks his head up into this beaver den, and he can breathe air and still be hiding. So he's concealed. Now they can't find him. Well, those Indians are looking up and down the creek bed, and they sure can't find him. So they figure, well, he must have hit his head on a rock and just floated down the river further than we would have thought. Let's go home and have a sandwich. So they go wherever they go and go back to camp, and I guess the game's over. John Colter, the game's still not over because he doesn't know how long they're going to be looking for him. He eventually gets brave enough and he starts to swim out, and he thinks, I'm just going to die under here if I don't get out of here anyhow. Too cold. And he swims up to the surface, and he looks up above, and there's no Indians. He made it. Great, he's alive. There's one small problem though. Still naked, still just got a little knife for something for defense or attack, and no shoes, and no weapons other than this, and no fire, and oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to go? There's no GPS or anything. There's no helicopters to come in. There's no cell phone service because there's no cell phones. And so here he is, he's in trouble. He's got to walk his way out of here. He thinks there's a fur trading post about 60 miles that way. What's he going to do when he gets there? I don't know. I just got to try and make it there. So he starts a-walking. And as he's a-walking, his feet are bleeding. He feels in misery, and he's absolutely in pain. But he got to keep going. He finds little puddles of water to drink. Muddy, nasty footprint water. Ugh. Oh, horrible. But it's something to keep him going. Now, something like that, if you're not drinking enough water and you're exposed to the elements, your mind can start playing tricks on you. And he starts thinking, I better get there fast, so I just got to keep going. So as he's going, he walks, and the ground starts to get really hot. It's not that the sun's out, it's still kind of in the fall. Here we are in the winter, it's really cold. But he was walking out there, and the ground was hot, almost as if he was stepping on a fire. And the ground, the mud where it was muddy, was bubbling up. It was boiling. And he thought, I must have died, and I'm in hell. I don't know where I am. He saw this water just shoot up into the air. Like 100 feet in the air. I must be losing my mind. I just got to keep walking. He lays down on the warm ground, puts leaves over him for the night to sleep, but early in the morning he starts walking again. He doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know how he's going to get there, but he's just going to keep trying. And then one day off in the distance, he thinks he sees it. Yes, I think I see it. It's got to be the fur trading post. But he's so exhausted, he just passes out. Now, somebody saw him. They came out and they grabbed him. They picked him up and they put clothes on him. They get blankets around him. They dried him off and gave him water and gave him food to eat so he could live. After a few days of nursing him back to health, he tells him all this story of what happened to him. And man, You survived a fight with the Blackfeet Indians. You survived the game arrows, and you walked through, well, you don't know if did you smoke a little something? What happened out there? You're talking about this place. This sounds kind of like hell. I mean, it really kind of sounds silly. So anyway, they made fun of him for that, and they said that John Colter had gone to hell and back, and they called this place, this mythical place, Colter's Hell. Well, today, we call it Yellowstone National Park, and they found out that everything he described was just as he described it. And if you've ever been to Yellowstone, it's a beautiful place, not like anything else in the world. So if you ever get a chance, go on and take a look.